Hi, and welcome back to the studio. First, I want to say thanks for joining me here. It's a lot of fun painting. I know that most people tune in for the woodworking, and I'm going to continue to do that. But I've made a promise to myself to paint more, and by posting these paintings once a week, that'll motivate me to paint more. The more you paint, the better you get. Again, this is very casual. We're not trying to paint a masterpiece here. We're just trying to become familiar with mixing color and really seeing the landscape differently. Once you start to paint, you'll start to see color differently. You'll see what makes up a landscape. I always paint on a 5 3/4 by 7-inch panel. You can make these out of plywood or masonite, cardboard, whatever you have. If you're a woodworker, you can make the panels like I use. And I also sell these. These are on my website. And the nice thing about these framed panels is you can paint on them. It kind of gives the painting its own environment so you can see it a little bit better. And the painting will sit on a shelf or a bookcase or whatever, and it gives you a minute to look at it. So what I like to do is make a painting and then look at it that night and decide whether or not I want to go back into it. And it's just, I think it's a nice little thing. So I'll have a link to these down in the description below. If you like these painting classes, do me a favor. If you're not going to watch the whole video, just leave the video running, because the higher view time is helpful for me, and it's just another motivator to help me continue to make these classes. So now let's go ahead and start painting. This scene is from Huber Woods Park, which is pretty close to my house. My printer's not working, so I'm just going to look at this video and then just try to paint it from memory and not get too concerned. So when you look at a landscape, the first thing you think of is green. And if we look at that green, that's pretty bright. So a lot of people will take a little white, put that in with the green, and then we have this sort of light green that doesn't have a lot to do with what we're seeing. So we want to knock that color down a little bit. And we'll grab a little yellow. You could even throw a little red in there and mix that up. My good friend Francis Cunningham, very good painter, well-known painter, he refers to colors as notes. So I'm putting a little black in here just to see what happens. Black really does make a big difference. Kind of darkens things up. You got to be careful how much black you use. But I like that green. And I just decided, though, that I'm going to put that green right there for a minute. And I'm going to mix up a gray. So I'm starting with a little titanium white. Again, a little black. And it's kind of grayer than I like. So I'll take that gray, then maybe take half of it, put it back, grab some more of the white, grab a little of the burnt umber, and a little of the cobalt blue, and mix that together. And I'm just decided that I want to wash in the sky, since there's very little sky in this painting. I just want to get that kind of established first, and that way if I pull some of the trees into the sky, I don't have to worry about the paint mixing. A little bit more of the burnt umber, and I think that looks pretty good. Maybe just a little yellow. And I'll just wash that in. Again, I'm going to dip the brush in paint thinner. It just helps the paint spread a little bit. And I'll go ahead and wash that in up at the top. It is kind of a thinner wash. You can see the the brush strokes. And I'll just leave it like that. Now I'm going to deal with the foreground a little bit in here. And I'll take this green and I think I'm gonna take another brush actually. And maybe wash that all in at the bottom. I dipped the brush into the paint thinner and then dried it off a little with the paper towel. And see what happens there. And you have to remember that darkness is the absence of light. So if you're looking at a forest, you often see the trees, then you might see a field, and then below the trees you'll see almost black. And that's because the trees are casting a shadow and you're looking into the forest, and that's the absence of light. So just think about that. When you're trying to make something or make a painting, you can create depth by sometimes adding dark colors next to each other or next to the greens. We'll see as this kind of progresses and see if that actually works. So I've got a little more of the burnt umber on my knife. I put that into the green, and maybe we're gonna throw in that tree bank, which is kind of in the background there. A little more of the burnt umber. It's kind of a misty day, so there's not a lot of bright contrasting light. And I'm going to push this right into the sky as I make it. Taking a little more of the permanent green, putting it in the area of the palette with all that other green. And now we're just going to mix up different notes of green and put them in the foreground, kind of see what happens. I want some yellow. It's kind of a nice yellow. We'll put a few notes of this color right on top of that field. That field is just kind of an overgrown. My brush is dirty, so maybe I shouldn't have gone with that brush. Maybe I'll go with a new brush. That field is it's kind of just an area they let go wild, and sometimes they brush hog it from time to time. So here's that lighter green. I think we're just going to put notes kind of next to each other and see what happens. Adding a little more yellow to that green. Maybe I'll use a clean brush again. Sometimes it's hard to find a clean brush. And now I'm going to throw some darkness under this whole bank of trees here by taking a little black, taking some of this green, burnt umber, it's kind of a very dark green, And maybe instead of putting that underneath this bank of trees here, I'll kind of layer it in here, and that might create some depth in this row of trees. Again, I'm just kind of painting that scene from memory. So, you know, we can look at the video or still from the video afterwards and see if it matched up at all. Now I'm going to make that darker with the black and put it underneath. See what that does. A painting like this can be fun to walk away from for a day or two, let this paint kind of set up, and then you can just keep putting notes of color in. Don't even worry about reality. It could just be an abstraction that's based on a landscape. And I'm going to try to kind of do that now, but it's not going to be as easy because this paint is wet, so it's going to want to move. It's going to want to push around. But I can still kind of try. Sometimes I might have to put the paint on a little thicker. Now I'll take a good piece of the titanium white here, put it in that green, grab a little of this, and then more yellow. It's kind of a nice color there, like that. And pull that in. Maybe I'll push that right into that blackness or that shadow area. See what happens. I'm not using any kind of a technique to try to replicate grasses or leaves, or I just want spots of color. But because I'm pushing that in there, or pushing into it, it does give you a softer line, which kind of lends itself to something more natural. But I kind of like what's happening right now. And so this whole area where you've got these kind of washes, I kind of like that actually, but I'll mess around with it. Why not? I'm going to mix up a little of the permanent green right on top of that pile. And I'm going to use the brush that I had just been using. And again, just more notes of color. Boy, I have a lot of fun when I get in kind of a zone like this. And now, maybe I'll add a little white to that color. And a new brush, another clean brush. Could almost think of it as just a bunch of dots, creating a bit of a space. You have to stop and look at what you're doing. It's a good idea to walk away from the painting, take a look at it from a little distance. This dark area could be a little harsh right now, and a way to maybe soften that up would be to take a dry brush. This actually could end up pulling the paint off. We'll see. You see what I mean? How it pulls it off like that? So you got to be careful. And don't really like that. So I'm going to take that dark green here, put a little more of the burnt umber in it. And, you know, sometimes if your brush is stiff too, it will scratch the paint off, as opposed to a brush that might have soft hairs. This is a little on the stiff side. Searching around for a brush. Don't really see one. This one's pretty bad, but the bristles are kind of soft though, so it might just lay the paint down. I don't really want to put paint thinner on the brush at this point because it will pull that paint off. See it? See, I'm pulling the paint off. If I waited a day or two, it wouldn't pull the paint off. This actually isn't too bad though. I might end up, that's kind of neat actually, where it looks like you're kind of going into it a little. I might go into this area similar to what I did down here. And then you could also go into the sky in that similar way where you're just making notes of color. Again, you're just treating this as a really casual painting. This is something to be discovered, not something precious. And sometimes in that pursuit of discovery, you can find something precious or something you like. I don't know about precious, but something you like, something that you can say, hey, I like that. I'm going to make a frame for it, and I'm going to put it on the wall. And if you can do that, then that's a win. All right, so I should just leave this maybe. I think I'm gonna, did you hear I just walked away from the painting to get a good look at it? I think I'm gonna mix up similar colors to this area here and try to pull it down a little into this darkness, because this shadow area is getting a little too big. So I'm going again with the green, take some of that blackish, brownish green color. And you know what you can do? You can hold the palette knife up to it and see what you think. So I kind of like that. And again, boy, I'm going to have to get some new brushes. Having a hard time finding brushes. This one maybe works. So I'm going to, again, go for the notes, kind of like I have down here, but up here, and maybe work it down a little bit into this whole shadowy area. It's definitely a much different green than I thought it was. Kind of like it, I think. what happened there? I got to lighten that up. More white. Clean off the palette knife. More green. A lot of yellow. We'll see what that does. Maybe I'll leave that. I'm going to take it out and put it in a frame and see if that makes the difference. Actually, I'll just, because it's a hassle to try to get the camera in the same place again, let me just kind of see if this will work. I think I'll keep that. Casual. Got to remember, it's casual. The best paintings are casual. You don't think about them too much. Okay, so I'm going to call this one done. And I was going to think about doing another quick painting for, just to put down some color notes with the paint that's on my palette. But I don't think I'm going to do that, but that doesn't mean that you can't. So a good idea, if you have an extra one of these, is just take the paint, mix up, and just make little notes of color, because it's just good to paint. I do just kind of want to get rid of that thing right there. So I've got little black and burnt umber on the brush. There you go. Okay, well, I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. It's not exactly like the landscape that I was looking at over in Huber Woods, but it's similar. I think the color values are the same. And as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking maybe I'd go back into it a little bit, change the shadowing here a little, but I like these color spots. And it makes me think like maybe we should just paint a canvas of color spots, an abstraction. And maybe we'll get into that next time. Maybe we'll do two paintings. We'll do a quick abstraction, and then from that abstraction, we'll try to do a more realistic landscape. So that's what it's all about, experimenting, having fun, very casual. Again, thanks for watching these. Hope you give it a thumbs up, tell a friend, and also if you're looking for one of these frame systems, you can find them on my website along with the paintings. All right. Have a great day, and I'll see you next week.